Hello, it's me. Oh, look, it's David Icke. Firstly, shout out to Actual Coverage for their coverage of this event. A protest against digital IDs. Always worthwhile, in my opinion. So, David Icke. Ah, David, you weirdo, you freak. You utterly deluded man. You strange little conspiracy theorist, you. Used to hear that all the time about David Icke. Always struck me as coming across as like a really nice bloke. So back in the day, David Icke used to be a soccer playing goalie, a goalie. We used to call them goalies, a goalkeeper. He was in a soccer team. He was like credible. He was a sportsman. He then went on to, I think, commentate on, as sportsmen often do, commentate on the sport that he used to play in, and athletics, I believe. If I remember, it's a long time ago. And he was good at it. Good presenter. Good pundit. And then it appears as though he started looking into the way the world really runs. And what I mean by that is who really holds the power. He became, I think, spiritually enlightened in a very personal way. And that, as it so often does, when anyone tries to educate themselves about spiritual natures and things, it leads into these offshoot subjects, which are, by normal standards, a bit bloody hairy, I can tell you. They're not for the faint of heart, because they deal with esotericism and interpretation of ancient scripture and belief, which can get a bit fantastical, to say the very least. And I think, David Icke sort of went there and, wearing his conviction on his sleeve, came out as a devotee of these, what were, and I think still are in most cases, fringe belief systems, or the belief of things that are on the fringe. And there was a moment back in the day where he was interviewed by a British entertainer called Terry Wogan, who was, despite the hatred I felt for what he did to David Icke, because I just thought it was so underhand. And I don't think any one person should have the ability to kill another on air with words and effectively destroy their lives. But Terry Wogan did that to David Icke. And I like Terry Wogan, as I say. He was a wonderful entertainer, very funny. And if you've not ever heard them, look up the Janet and John broadcasts. Bloody hilarious. Anyway, back to the point. During an interview, David Icke was talking about his beliefs, his views, which were, as I say, very fringe, on the biggest TV show of the time, the Terry Wogan show. And Terry Wogan effectively delivered the killing blow with the words, David, they're not laughing with you, they're laughing at you. Let's have a listen.
The left is being manipulated by this cult. The right is being manipulated by this cult. And yet they have...
So the... just ignore the mime artist walking casually past in the background. Didn't see that. This cult, who are this cult? Is it the Fabian Society? Is it the WEF? Could it be any number of other Shadowy organizations.
The right at war with the left. And while people are fighting each other, they're not seeing that they're both being played by the same force.
That is true.
But what's happened since COVID, as you can see, is more and more people have started to grasp that this is not some made up as you go along system of control. It is actually very coldly calculated. And what I've been saying all these years is it's coldly calculated on a global level. There is a global network, what I call the global cult. And through that network, it imposes its will and its agenda on every country eventually, which is...
Now, he uses this language, like it's a global cult. And he's not wrong. But using that language immediately puts people on the back foot. Because most normal people don't have any experience of cults. They have experience of organizations. They have experience of movements. They have experience of shadowy organizations and shadowy movements. They have experience of intelligence organizations. You kind of get where I'm going with this. He's always been the same. He kind of calls a spade, but leaves himself hanging precariously by a thread. But when the thing that changed it for me was like the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, who's no longer in charge apparently. David Icke uses the word cult, and I would use the word organization because that's what I see. And then I saw a picture of Klaus Schwab dressed in his Gandalf attire, his wizardy wardrobe. Do have a look for it, and it's a cult. It's a cult. Okie dokie.
Why during COVID you had basically a global response that was the same. And here you now have, just by coincidence, all these countries now introducing digital ID. It's a global agenda instigated by a global network. And people like this guy, Keir Starmer, he's just a gopher. Trump is just a gopher. They're here today, gone tomorrow people.
Well,
whereas
politics.
The cult network that's orchestrating it, it's orchestrated it through the decades. And
he's not wrong about the here today, gone tomorrow. That's part of the system. And Ike's been speaking about this for decades now. That the power framework that we see in front of us that represents democracy on the planet is in fact just a convenient mechanism which has been very well engineered to provide the appearance of democracy whilst allowing chosen few, the elite, people at the very top of the ladder. Who would that be nowadays? Just, do a quick search. Who are the multi-billionaires, maybe? Would that be it? You could reasonably think, maybe Bill Gates. He's right up there, But I have a feeling that it's not the people that we can see. It's powerful people we can't see. And the power isn't necessarily about money. The power is about legacy. From the time of Christ down, who knows how old this is. But I think it transcends money. I think there may be a group of people who are so deeply entrenched in the nexus of power on the planet that it's, who knows, there may be some kind of Merovingian royal line. Who knows, frankly. It does hurt your brain thinking about it a bit, though. Back to digital IDs.
Centuries is always there. And this is a real line in the sand, and if we allow it to be crossed, then what's the future of freedom? There isn't any, you know?
But there is no solution. There is no solution for that.
Well, the solution is simple. There's 8 billion people in the world, I'm told. And the number of people in full knowledge who are imposing this is, by comparison, a handful. And what happens is people get sold belief systems, calculatedly, belief systems.
But in all fairness, they've been sold it consistently for like a few hundred years.
Political belief
It's not hard to see why people just believe it.
scientific belief systems, all of them.
You know what we're given.
Once you've got belief systems, it's like a honeycomb in a beehive. There are all these belief systems, all isolated from each other, all competing with each other, and then you play them off. And if you look at what's happening in America,
you know, on a very sort of mechanical level, that is true.
The left is being manipulated by this cult. The right is being manipulated by this cult. And yet they have set the right at war with the left. And while people are fighting each other, they're not seeing that they're both being played by the same force.
For me, it goes further than that, if I understand what David Icke is saying. And that is that the left, as we have in the form of Keir Starmer's government, has been hijacked. Because Keir Starmer's government has nothing to do with the left. I joined Labour because Jeremy Corbyn got in, and I understood values when I looked at what Corbyn had to say that spoke to me. When it became clear that Corbyn was being pushed out of the Labour Party and, you know, eventually left, I was gone. Because the writing was on the wall for me. I thought, there's something going on here. And there was. The left have been chosen to deliver these massively unpopular policies, digital ID being the latest one, the one that's on everyone's lips. And cynically, the left have been hijacked because they were seen historically as the party that were caring. Keir Starmer's Labour became the cuckoo in traditional Labour's nest, pushing out traditional values in favour of its effectively right-wing, dare I say, fascistic way of implementing policy. I mean, we just had a petition which garnered 2.7 million signatures in order to, get this question of digital IDs discussed, debated. Nope. Roundly ignored, as was the one before it. Let's carry on, shall we?
And until we realise that and put down the fault lines of division, agree to differ, but concentrate on the common threat, then we might have a chance. But while we're fighting among each other, it's divide and rule. And so what you've got, you see, in America, you've got the right in power imposing itself on the left and using the left as the excuse to take away freedom. This guy is supposed to be of the left, and he's using the right to justify the destruction of freedom. And instead of saying, well, he's left and he's right, we should be saying, what's the outcome? What is the outcome in both cases? Freedom disappears. freedom of speech disappears. And if people watch the outcome and not the words, not the rhetoric, they'll see that actually, whether it's left, right, or centre, they're going in the same direction.
Should have like crypto, gold, silver, devices. What else? Which advice you give to us?
Well, I'm not going to advise anyone financially. That's up to them. All I'm saying is, while we're divided, systematically divided, they will rule.
Yeah, but government controls the money, so that's it. If we impose digital money, so there is no solution.
Well, that's the whole idea of the digital ID and the digital currency is the complete control of money. But people just have to look at the situation and decide individually what they want to do. What I'm saying is, from the big picture point of view, we're being played off against each other,
and or it has been. If you take Icke's final sentence there, we've been played off against each other. Think of all the terrible social division that has happened in the past and ask yourself a question. Was it engineered? And don't think for 1 second that it couldn't be engineered. Because just like digital IDs, they just push it through. The problem is now with the internet, people are just generally better educated. Back in the 80s, when I first started listening to David Icke, reading his stuff, it was a bit wacky, but I found it interesting. If I told anybody that I was reading David Icke or listening to his stuff, the only thing they had to go on was the Terry Wogan interview, where he'd been vilified and effectively discredited utterly. And I would then become discredited also by association with Icke. But history has a funny way of exposing everything. And Icke has now, decades later, been proved far more right than he was ever wrong about the power structures on the planet. And am I smug? Just a tiny bit, really. Digital IDs are control. Digital currency is control. Ask yourself a question: what's the worst case scenario of governmental control? And see if that can, in some way, shape, or form, fit into where we are. Or where we're going, rather. So, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do like, subscribe, and share. It really would help the channel if you did. Of course, subscribing. I don't know, why do they call it subscription? Subscribe. It's free. Surely it should just be follow. Loads of people don't subscribe because they're convinced they're going to get charged. And there is no charge. Anyway, as I said, do like, subscribe, and share. Leave a comment. And until next time, this is me signing off. Do look after yourselves.